All right, let's dive in. We're going to unpack a story of pure genius, intense rivalry, and a discovery that literally changed the world. But at its heart, this is really the story of one of the greatest injustices in the history of science.
So I've got a question for you. What do you think is the single most important photograph in all of biology? You might be picturing, I don't know, some incredible animal in the wild, maybe a massive ecosystem. But nope, it's actually a picture of something so small you can't even see it.
This right here, this is it. It looks pretty simple, right? Just a grainy, kind of blurry X. It's called Photo 51, but don't let its looks fool you. This one single image, it held the key to unlocking the most fundamental secret of life itself. Yeah, really.
You know, as powerful as this image is, the story behind it is, well, it's even more powerful. See, this absolutely critical photograph was taken by a woman who was then completely, systematically erased from the narrative. And her story is the one we're getting into today.
So, who was she? Who was this forgotten scientist, the brilliant mind behind this incredible image?
Her name was Rosalind Franklin, and she wasn't just a scientist. She was an absolutely brilliant, incredibly meticulous one. She was a top expert in a super specialized field, and she is the one person who captured the image that gave everyone the final, crucial clue they needed to figure out the structure of DNA.
Okay, so her specialty was something called X-ray crystallography. It sounds complicated, and honestly, it is. Basically, you take a molecule, you crystallize it, and then you shoot a beam of X-rays at it. The way those X-rays bounce off and scatter creates a pattern, kind of like a shadow puppet, but on an atomic level. And that pattern, like the one we see in Photo 51, lets you reverse engineer the molecule's 3D shape. It is painstaking, incredibly difficult work. It takes just immense skill and so much patience. And that brings us right back to this number 51. Why 51? Because after just countless hours in the lab, this was the 51st photo she took. And it was, by far, the clearest, most perfect image of DNA that anyone had ever seen. And right there, hidden in that simple X shape, was the unmistakable signature of a helix.
But here's the thing. For all that work, for that groundbreaking discovery, Franklin never got the credit she deserved. Not really. Her breakthrough became the foundation for someone else's Nobel Prize. This is the story of how a legacy was stolen.
So how did this even happen? Well, it basically went down in 4 steps. First, Franklin gets this amazing image, Photo 51. Then, a colleague of hers shows the photo to a rival scientist, James Watson. And this is the key part. He does it completely behind her back, without her permission, without her even knowing. So now Watson and his partner, Francis Crick, have her data. They have the last piece of the puzzle they were missing.
And when you look at the timeline, it's just infuriating. Check this out. 1952, Franklin captures Photo 51. The very next year, 1953, Watson and Crick published their famous DNA model, giving her only a tiny, dismissive little footnote. Then, the truly tragic part, in 1958, Rosalind Franklin dies of cancer. She was only 37. And just 4 years after she died, Watson, Crick, and the colleague who showed them the photo, they all win the Nobel Prize. Franklin couldn't, since the prize isn't awarded after death. But the real crime is that she was never truly acknowledged even when she was alive.
I mean, just look at the difference here. It's staggering. Watson and Crick, they become household names, they win the Nobel Prize, they write best-selling books about their genius discovery, and Rosalind Franklin, she got nothing. No credit in their papers. She died way too young. And then, to really add insult to injury, she was painted as this difficult, incompetent person who couldn't even understand her own work. It's just unbelievable.
And this is so important to understand. It wasn't just a one-time oversight. Years later, James Watson wrote his famous book, The Double-Helix, and in it, he actively trashed her reputation. He painted her as this difficult, uncooperative person who just didn't get it. And that narrative, his narrative, stuck. For decades, it's how the world saw her. It basically wrote her out of her own story.
You know, there's actually a term for this, and it's a powerful one. Epistemological theft. It's a big phrase, but it means something pretty simple. It's not just stealing an idea. It's stealing someone's knowledge and then deliberately erasing them from the historical record, wiping away their contribution. And it happens all too often to people from marginalized groups.
But here's the good news. History isn't always written in permanent ink. The record is slowly but surely being corrected. Which makes you wonder, right? Who gets to write history in the first place? Thankfully, people didn't let it rest. Later scholars, historians, biographers, other scientists, they went back. They dug through her personal letters, her detailed lab notebooks, and what they found proved what she always knew. She was anything but incompetent. She was a brilliant scientist who was right on the verge of solving the whole thing herself. The evidence was clear. She was shut out, and her data was taken because she was a woman in a man's world, a world that just wasn't ready to give her a seat at the table.
So why are we talking about this now? Why does a story from, 70+ years ago still matter so much? Well, because it's more than just one story. It's a perfect, almost textbook example of sexism in science. It shines a huge spotlight on how bias in a system decides who becomes a hero and who gets forgotten. And maybe most importantly, it totally messes with our idea of how science even works. We love the story of the lone genius having a eureka moment, right? But the truth is, discovery is messy. It's collaborative, and sometimes, yeah, it's deeply unfair.
We're lucky that we know Rosalind Franklin's name now, that her story eventually came out. But it really makes you think, doesn't it? How many other Rosalind Franklins are out there? How many other massive breakthroughs were made by people who were just erased, whose names we'll never even get the chance to learn?
And that kind of leads to the final big question I want to leave you with. When we tell these stories and we only celebrate a few people as lone geniuses, what does that do to our understanding of how knowledge is even created? How does that bias warp our idea of who gets to be a scientist, of who is capable of making the next great discovery? And what does it stop us from seeing about the real, messy, complicated, and sometimes unjust path that human progress actually takes?